Welcome to Human Potential at Work, the show where we explore social impact, inclusion, and empowerment of everyone, including persons with disabilities. Get ready to be inspired, hear success stories, and learn tips and principles for bringing out the best in everyone.
Hello, everyone. This is Deborah Rue, and this is Human Potential at Work. Today, I'm interviewing somebody I consider a great leader around the world, but certainly here in the United States. And he is joining us a couple of days after our presidential election from Pennsylvania, one of the states that we're watching. So off camera, I was asking him, who is going to win the presidency, but apparently he doesn't know either. So we're going to have a different conversation rather than asking him what Pennsylvania is going to do. But Dr. Rory Cooper is the Director of Human Engineering and Research Laboratories for the University of Pittsburgh, and his work has changed lives. And he actually was featured in AARP as a centerfold for October 2020, which is very cool. And he is up for Pittsburgh Veteran of the Year, which I voted for him. Unfortunately, the voting is closed, so for 2020. So I hope he wins. But welcome to the program, Dr. Cooper. How are things in Pennsylvania?
Well, Deborah, thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show. Things are good in Pennsylvania. Actually, today is a beautiful sunny day, and we're all just waiting to see what the results of the election is in various races, actually. But I'm happy to be here and to be on your show and talk a little bit about what we do.
Yes, yes. And I really love the work that you're doing. It's human-centered design. And I recently had another guest on the show, and we were talking about technology and, and it's just so important for technology to work for humans. And so a lot of the work that you do at the university, a lot of the work is exactly about that. So tell us more. Tell us more, first of all, about your career, if you don't mind. Who is Dr. Cooper? Tell us more about you first. I mean, centerfold for AARP. That's
Well, I guess to start, since you brought that up, I've twice been a centerfold, which once was for AARP, the other time was for Popular Science. So, it's just kind of a fun fact. Also, another kind of fun fact, I think I've got one with me, is I have my own trading card. I'll just throw it on the screen there briefly. It's from the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office.
Wow.
28 people in the history of the United States have been issued a trading card by the Department of Commerce, of which I'm one of them. Probably recognize some of the other people: Nicholas Tesla, Thomas Edison, George Washington Carver. That's pretty exciting as well. I'm also a former Olympic athlete, Paralympic athlete. I won a bronze medal in 1988 and actually featured in the Olympic and Paralympic Museum in the United States. At least information about me. I'm not in the museum personally.
But that's really cool. That's so cool. I would love to have a playing card. I mean, that's really cool I know that your work is very impressive, and I don't know if my audience knows about your work, which is why we wanted to have you on the show, but those are some really, really powerful accolades. So congratulations. You deserve them.
So I'm the founder and the director of the Human Engineering Research Laboratories, which is a joint effort of the University of Pittsburgh and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. And there's a team of about 70 of us, investigators, research team members, graduate students, undergraduate students, postdocs. And what we do is we create and we study technologies for people with disabilities, primarily in the area of mobility and manipulation, to allow people to live life to the fullest and participate in all aspects of life as much as we can provide. And we do work in in things like mobility, so wheelchairs, and a little bit on prosthetics and orthotics. And we do robotic technologies, some what you might call home modifications or smart home technologies, and most recently have become engaged also in autonomous and accessible transportation technologies as well. It's a lot of fun. I started the lab January, make 27 years, so it's pretty crazy that we still exist. Um, and we've launched a number of companies um, that have taken products of ours and brought them to the marketplace. And so some of them, I'm sure your listeners may use, like the Permobile virtual seating coach, or the very light cushion, or the ADI backrest, or things like that. So that's pretty fun and pretty rewarding. And of course, we train people all over the world. I have people that have worked in HERL or alumni that are from Mexico, Colombia, Canada, Brazil, um, Peru, Japan, India, China, Germany, Sweden, Hungary, Netherlands, Switzerland, the UK, all basically all over the place. Even if I'm from Africa, from Japan, Australia, New Zealand too. So that's pretty exciting too. Kind of a global network that we work with. We're very focused on um, what I call participatory action design and engineering, where people with disabilities are a large part of our team, over 25% of our team, as well as they are the ones that set our research direction, our research roadmap as well.
And you mentioned that you've been there for 27 years, but it seems like we need you there more than ever before, because so much has happened in 27 years, but now we're really seeing the emergence of the AI and the robotics and the mobility, and it's all coming together. And I know that I've talked to you before, and you also partner with corporations that are building things as well. So I think
We
it's
do,
more
yeah.
relevant.
We've partnered with Toyota and Hyundai and Google and other companies, as Amazon as well, to try to influence their technologies and help them be more inclusive in the work that they do, and which both creates opportunities for products that people need, as well as job opportunities as well. So those are other areas, and those are just a small collection. We also work a lot with organizations that support people with disabilities, like Paralyzed Veterans America and Disabled American Veterans, and Association for the Advancement of People with Disabilities, and Easter Seals, and and various other organizations to help fulfill their mission. One of our goals is, we recognized early on. I'm an engineer by training, and so you kind of have to stay in your lane or stay in the things right? And we're focused on technologies that can make to help people with disabilities fully participate in society. And that's kind of it was a niche early on, and but now that the Americans with Disabilities Act is over 30 years old, and there are follow-on legislations in the EU and in Israel and other countries around the world, um, so that it's kind of the it's starting to come of age basically now, right? Where the power people are recognizing the power of technology to be create a more inclusive world, and a more accessible world.
Well, I want to talk about this from the lens, just for a little while, of veterans. First of all, I would be curious what branch of the military you were in. My father was in the Navy. I was born in the Naval Hospital in Pensacola, Florida, and my brother was in the Air Force. And so I come from background, a veteran background. But I'm curious about that. But I also I want you to talk a little bit about what we've learned with these things by supporting our veterans, because we actually have learned so much. And I think sometimes people don't realize the parallels that have run between those two things. The work that we've done to support veterans have provided great value to the community, people with disabilities and people aging into disabilities. So let me give you the microphone.
Well, thank you. I'm an Army veteran, and we have a long history of service in our family, in the Army, the Navy, and the Marine Corps, and the Air Force, actually. Um, I was a young sergeant when I was injured, and the VA helped put me through school, which in itself is a benefit to me, and hopefully it's benefited other people. And as I mentioned earlier, I split my time between the University of Pittsburgh and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, even to this day. And the veterans and the VA are um, a lot of people don't recognize or realize how important they are to promoting an inclusive U.S. and world, for that matter. One of the things that so the VA takes a more holistic approach to the provision of technology for its veterans that are eligible for care, and that often means it's the early adopter and the lead organization for changing healthcare policy in the United States. Uh, and not this, well, this we did actually, believe it or not, in almost about 20 years ago, I had a VA center on telerehabilitation. And under these times of COVID, telemedicine and telerehabilitation are huge. Um, and the the VA, for example, I think they did um, less. They did a couple 100,000 telehealth visits in February of this year. By June, they were doing several million telehealth visits per month, and and but that's just an example. The wheelchair I'm sitting in, you can't see it, but is a ultralight titanium wheelchair, and the VA was one of the early adopters of that technology, and because of that, that allowed the company to generate enough revenue to stay and grow its business, but also to collect the data, and the VA to collect the data to show the benefits to the population, which then later expanded to private health insurance and eventually to Medicare and Medicaid. And so that's another tremendous role. The other role that the VA plays, and that people often overlook, is that many nurses and physicians and therapists, and for that matter, clinical engineers and rehab engineers, receive their training in the VA, or at least a portion of their training in the VA. And so it's a huge research engine, development engine, education engine, and it's basically in some ways, it's the lead provider in healthcare. And so you could actually say, so goes the VA, so goes healthcare in the United States. Sometimes 5 years, sometimes 20 years behind the VA, but when the VA is often out in front because of the way that because of the mandate to treat veterans.
I'm going on mute because I actually have a military helicopter flying over my house, because I think we must be in their summer, even though it's not summer anymore, but I think we're in a flight path that we get. So it gets really loud. But I also forgot to mention, as you were talking about the VA, my sister was in the Marines, and she actually is a disabled veteran. And my father, when he got out of the Navy, he joined the Coast Guard, which is also part of our military. And my husband's father was in I forget which branch he was in, but you made me think of him also because he was a doctor. He was a doctor in World War II. And so it's just, veterans have done so much for our country beyond keeping us safe, but what we're learning from our veterans, the technology, using it in the field, using it afterwards, and even the comment you made, because we've been trying to get, for example, telehealth. We've been trying to do telemedicine and stuff, but it wasn't really catching on until the pandemic. And now we're like, well, why? I actually went in a couple of weeks ago to get a physical. And my doctor, I went in there and she's like, well, what are you here for? And I said, I'm here for a physical. And she's like, well, you could have done that with telemedicine. And I'm like, I didn't know I could have done that with because in this day of COVID-19, I would much rather do telemedicine. But it's interesting because this pandemic has actually accelerated us. And we're not going to go backwards because it's so much more efficient in some cases to have a telemedicine, doing it via telemedicine. Sometimes certainly you want to be person to person and them looking at it at your body. But I just, with my old company, Tech Access, we had a program where we were supporting veterans, teaching them to do web accessibility as a career opportunity. So I've always had a great love for taking care of our veterans and understanding how the VA and the vet, because the VA gets so much criticism. It's like, oh, this, but they're actually doing some really, really powerful things that are changing people's lives and certainly the community. But you and I had also talked a little bit about this in that it's what I find with the experience I've had and that I've heard from a lot of other people that have had similar experiences is, so once again, my daughter was born with Down syndrome. Well, when a baby is born, we have programs in place to support. And could we do more? Sure. But I got support. You mentioned Easter Seals. Easter Seals stepped in when my daughter was diagnosed with Down syndrome in Jacksonville, Florida, and supported us. And and I will always be grateful to Easter Seals United. Way was supportive and stuff with some of the programs that they were offering, the Hanover, the ARC, the National ARC, the local ARCs, things like that. But one thing that you and I talked about is when you acquire a disability as you are, after birth, after a child, it becomes a little bit more problematic. And then you have someone like, sadly, like my husband, who has aged into to dementia after being hit by a car when he was a child, traumatic brain injury, old traumatic brain injury, and all that. And people that are aging into disabilities, especially after a certain age, they're not getting the same supports that the younger people get, the younger programs that we have in place. And I know we talked a little bit about that as well. And I know the initials HERL, the HERL, the Human Engineering Research Laboratories. I know that that's something that y'all look at it as well, but there does seem to be an additional digital divide when it comes to supporting people with disabilities or supporting elders with disabilities. And then of course you put the veterans in the mix and that gets interesting. But I was just wondering if you have also found that to be the case and what what you're doing to support those problems.
Well, that's great. So we look, we're kind of agnostic. We look more on how to improve people's function and across the age span.
Okay.
And if there are certainly different programs for children and different programs for veterans and different programs for older adults. And so those are mostly large to eligibility for different types of healthcare and the services and products that they can receive, or at least be covered by insurance or government or state agencies. From our perspective, we don't want to be too limited by that because our goal is to try to create a brighter future. And if you limit yourself to what's covered today, then you can't think you can't do the blue sky kind of thinking that needs to be done. So we try to focus. Now, when we get to the point where we have a new technology, then we want to provide enough of the groundwork that it does get covered by somebody, and that goes back to where the VA being an early adopter is a huge benefit in that regard. And sometimes the coverage for children is a little bit broader than it is for working age adults or older adults, and so that's another population where you can kind of work on being early adoption of technologies as well. But the other thing about and then of course if you're fortunate, all of us age, and if you're fortunate and you age with it, they'll be able to age with a disability, then typically you get additional impairments and additional conditions that emerge. And we try to look at healthy aging with a disability as well. So that might involve adaptive sports and recreation, or ways to be engaged with friends and family. And so, or most recently, we've gotten engaged in driving, right? So,
Right.
um, there are technologies that can help people drive, but there are now commercial technologies. So for me, I use an adapted van. One of the fun things for me is that when I first was injured, closing the sliding door to put my wheelchair in was a huge problem. And now there's power door openers and closed. They're a benefit to everybody, but really came out of trying to make accommodations for people with disabilities to be able to close. Same with the powered rear hatch, right? It's a great benefit for me, but benefits everyone. Now we're looking at a transformation to autonomous vehicles. And most people kind of think of autonomous vehicles as cars that drive themselves. Eventually, I think they'll get there. Um, and if you're familiar with the Jetsons cartoon show, right, they might not only have cars that drive themselves but fly. Uh, Believe it or not, Hyundai Motors is working on such a thing. And but there's technologies now that make it possible for people with disabilities and older adults to drive safely and to drive safely longer.
Right.
So things like all of us, if you bought a car after 2010, or especially if you bought a car this year, then you have some features like, the easy ones are ABS braking and the automatic braking systems and traction control. But now there's, and the rear backup safety. You see it if you watch commercials, right? You see that. And there's also, lane control, right? So if you start to drift out of your lane, or to signal if there's blind spot signaling, right? If you see there's a car in your blind spot, or something in your blind spot, and all those are really autonomous vehicles technology. So the car is not actually, in some cases, actually does take over if it determines that it's going to be you're going to create a risk to yourself or others. Uh, but it also sometimes it makes everybody safer.
Right.
But it enables some people to drive, right? So in America, if you don't live in a large urban city where you have an extensive public transportation system, or access to an on-demand service, then you need to drive, or you need to have access to a friend or family member who does drive. And so these technologies, I think, have tremendous benefit to allow people who currently can't drive, or to allow people to preserve their ability to drive longer. And
Right.
that's, I think, that's some other things too. We talk about people who have disabilities due to the autism spectrum. They may be a little bit unsure about driving. They may be capable of driving, just not lack the confidence, or even for that matter, somebody with a post-concussive syndrome or post-traumatic stress. And now there are technology, the current technologies and emerging technologies could actually assist with that. For truckers, for example, there's now cameras that face and look at you to see if you're getting drowsy or if you're not paying attention. Those
Right.
sort of technologies can also make it become more universal technologies to allow everybody to live more comfortably, safely, and be more inclusive for people with disabilities.
And I agree. I know that when we realized that my husband had dementia, one of the things that he did was he wanted us. I had a Camry, Toyota Camry, which had a lot of miles on it, but I also care about the environment, so I'm trying to be responsible. But he went out and bought two new Subarus, one for myself and one for him. And even though it's not a fully autonomous car, it has, like you said, it had all the things that you mentioned. It had the braking. It has the third. If somebody's in my blind spot, I think that is an amazing technology. It has reverse, and as I'm using them, I think, how can how did I ever drive without it? It definitely made me a better driver, but also it helps with people that are distracted drivers, which are, those human beings are distracted. And so it has been so powerful. The lane thing, I was driving with a friend of mine that has intellectual disabilities. And I was driving in the country because I live in the country, and it kept going beep, 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 beep. And he's like, "What is that noise?" And I said, well, I'm not driving properly, so let me be better about staying in my lane. So, because I know the road so well, but all of these things, you don't have to wait till a car can drive itself by itself. We are already benefiting from these, as you said. And I know one specific time I was turning right and I thought I had plenty of room. Well, the car did not think I was driving, and the car actually took the controls away from me. And I knew immediately that I was not in control anymore. And it sort of freaked me out, but it stopped and I didn't hit the car in front of me. I didn't think I was, but it actually, I think, is maybe smarter than I am because it thought that I was not handling the situation properly. So it hasn't happened to me often, but I think sometimes people don't realize how we're already benefiting from this, as you said. And I was wondering if you might share a few other accomplishments that you've seen that you're doing it from HERL. I mean, tell us more about what you're doing, because I know you're into some amazing things. So give us some more um,
Yeah,
examples.
sure. I give you a couple. So one of the things that's I always I like to talk about is that I really started this work probably 30 years ago now. So as we transitioned from to digital controls of power wheelchairs, and I recognize that this could be a real opportunity to expand people's ability to have independent mobility. And so um, we I started working on different user interfaces, and we started working on different algorithms for control as well. And one of the kind of a fun story I like to tell is that we through the VA we patented a this device called variable compliance joystick with compensation algorithms. And the compensation algorithms were, for example, if you had multiple sclerosis and you kind of got tired over the day and you were able to generate less force, it could compensate for that. Or if you had a person with traumatic brain injury, cerebral palsy, and you had tremor, and you could kind of compensate for that as it changed over the day, or even in it, to tune it for the individual. And some people can't push, straight left and right, forwards and backwards, but they could come up with signals that you could discern, right? So we call those the bias axes. And so the fun thing about that was the VA decided to patent it, but to let companies use it as a royalty-free license.
Oh, cool.
So the idea was to get it out to many companies without blocking one company from preventing other people from using it. And so the fun thing was that so this technology is basically in every power wheelchair in the world, which is really pretty fun. Literally over the lifetime of since we did these inventions, hundreds of thousands of people have benefited.
I know.
And
It's
to the
exciting.
point was that when the people that Medicare and Medicaid asked me to come to their offices to explain to them what we had done, because um, if you look at the Medicare records for power wheelchairs, once this technology became integrated, it sort of hit an exponential growth. And really what happened was that people that were being pushed in manual chairs by friends or family members were now driving independently for the first time. And when I met people, that my wife is a PT, she works in this, she runs the UPMC Center for Assistive Technology. And they started providing these, they were just, it was amazing. There are people that actually, we used to be in the same building, we're in different buildings now, but people would come up, they come up to me, they come upstairs and show me they were driving, right? And just what the freedom to be able to drive independently again. some people for the first time, and other people that had an accident or illness and lost the ability to have their independent mobility, what that meant for them. And so that's one of the things we're very proud of. Even though it didn't make us any money, but it did change people's lives. And I like to tell people, I get paid a lot in smiles and tears.
Well, and I know that you recently got the Department of Transportation gave you a grant for a University Transportation Center for Autonomous Vehicles and Transportation Systems. That is really impressive. That's a huge deal. And I know we've talked a little bit about it, but I was wondering if you wouldn't explore that more.
Well, sure. Well, there's a couple things exciting about that. That's the first one targeting people with disabilities, right?
Oh, good,
so the fact is that the Department of Transportation recognized the need for such a center, right? Which is tremendous.
I agree.
And so I'm very honored to lead that team and actually be part of the University Transportation Center program within the Department of Transportation. And now be working with other people who are trying to address various transportation problems. And then overlap in many regards to people with disabilities, right? I mean, the best thing for us, often, is if we can make mainstream technologies and services accessible to people with disabilities. And vice versa, things that we're developing actually improve the lives of everyone in some cases. Now, the easy answer is, believe it or not, I've been around long enough that I worked on early curb cuts. I worked on the truncated half domes. I worked on a project in Washington, D.C. called the Tactile Capital for people who are visually impaired. And so, you think about that, but how many people use curb cuts? Delivery people, people with strollers, wheelchair users, and now robots to do delivery, right? Autonomous delivery are using those curb cuts. So it is, so it's nice when it goes both ways, right? For that matter, the texting on a phone, not that I had anything to do with that, but it is a tremendously empowering for people with disabilities and for people without disabilities, right? I mean, shoot, wait 5 more years and there'll be an entire generation that wouldn't know how to live without it, right?
Right.
And
I remember hearing one time, I heard this from IBM. I heard this from somebody that worked at IBM in the accessibility lab. And they said that whenever IBM first came up with speech to text and text to speech, and they were trying to get everybody excited about it, when the engineers building the cars heard about it, they got really excited because they said, wow, think what we could do with this for everybody, like you said. And I think there's so many examples of things that have been created for the community of people with disabilities, captioning, curb cuts, so many more, speech to text, that had greatly benefited society. I think the other day I had to use a key. I haven't had to use a key in a while. I had to use a key to get in my daughter's apartment, and I had all the stuff in my hands, and I was struggling to get the key in right. And my daughter has really struggled with this key entry. And I think of the times, bless you, when we used to have to use, well, and some cars still do, but you use the key entry, and the safety issues as a woman struggling, getting in my, being able for the car to unlock the driver's car because it knows I'm there. So that, I mean, there's all kind of safety issues. So a lot of the stuff that we've created over the years, and you're responsible for creating a lot of this in your team, this benefits society in so many other ways that society doesn't even realize, because it's hard to match that key with just that one little thing. And if my husband has a trimmer now, so you're trembling and you're trying to get the key in. So or it's dark and it's raining, or so the work that your lab is doing, it is very, very powerful. And
That's a great example. We over a decade ago, we worked on exactly that problem with on the Wounded Warrior Home Project, where we were trying to design for military housing, to create accessible military housing, because a lot of, not only do you have wounded warriors that continue to serve in the active duty, but you have children and you have older adults that move in with them, or they might be a family member or spouse with a disability. And one of the things we came up with is that they all have some kind of military ID card.
right, right.
And that ID card, actually,
You have an ID card.
I've got one here, right? Has an RFID chip on it. And
Okay.
so we use that to have them be able to open the door, and not only open the door, but announce who's coming. So if I went up to somebody's house, then if it's my house, it could be programmed to open the door. If it wasn't my house, it could still read it and say, "Hey, Rory's at the door,"
Right.
and the person can let you in. And so, that's it's great to see that kind of keyless entry is grown and grown and grown. But you're, like you said, if you don't have the ability to use the key, this way you can use access, have access to it. For that matter, not that we had anything to do with it, but I think it's how things kind of build upon each other. In some countries in the world, you can use a phone app or a card with an RFID chip in it for money, right? And then for somebody who's visually impaired, they don't have to determine what the marked bills or whatever, right? They can just pay. Today's world, most people don't even carry much cash on them, or any cash at all, for that matter, right?
I never do. I never do. And it's like when somebody asks me for cash, I'm like, oh, I just never carry. And if I do carry it, I spend it on all kind of things I didn't know I needed. Oh, I didn't know I needed that necklace.
Right.
You have a necklace I didn't need, but yeah. So it's really interesting, and I want to talk about some technologies that are so powerful, but at the same time they're very expensive. Something like an exoskeleton that I know, things like that y'all have been involved with, and it's such a wonderful thing for somebody that has a spinal cord injury, and in so many ways. But the technology, some of this technology we're talking about, is very expensive, and so getting these these technologies into the hand that's into the hand let me finish my sentence, Deborah, into the hands of the people that need them. But I think one reason why, there's so many reasons why I'm impressed with your work, but one reason I'm impressed is because you are representing the VA also. And there's so, even though once again we talk often about what we're not doing for our veterans, there's actually some really powerful things that we are doing. And so how do you help us get over those things? And that, I know one thing that you can do, and you said this already during the interview, but getting something to the market is a lot easier than people realize. And so you support entrepreneurs that are in tools and things that have been created, getting them to the market. And agencies like the VA can just be a total game changer. But I was just wondering if you wanted to comment on some of those things, because I know sometimes people get frustrated here in the United States because they see things that their insurance isn't going to cover or they can't get access to. But then you take it outside the US and you look at it globally, and there's so much really cool technology and things that make our lives better that are only available in English, or they're only available in the States. Or so I was just wondering if y'all have gotten involved in any of those more complex problems, and I know you have, but or if you wanted to comment a little bit about it, because that's something I hear a lot of criticism about. Great, you can create the exoskeleton, but what good does it do me, because I never will have access to it, for example.
Well, no, that's great. That's a lot of questions in one.
I know. Sorry.
So, one thing we try to do is try to create accessible and appropriate technology. We do work on really advanced technology, but also some fairly simple technology as well. Um, so let me kind of address a couple things. So exoskeletons is really at this point there are some products that are commercially available. Really, it's more of a demonstration, I would say, though. And I would uh, I would probably change what you said a little bit. I actually really think the big benefit for exoskeletons are probably more on people with incomplete spinal cord injuries, people with
Okay.
traumatic brain injuries, and people with stroke,
Oh,
uh,
that's interesting.
because they
TBI.
more
That
where they can assist with coordination and movement rather than provide total walking. I think the ability to walk completely is for people complete spinal cord injuries is still largely experimental, and uh, and I think actually the benefit there is more likely to be in conjunction with some sort of regenerative therapy
okay.
as a rehab tool rather than a mobility tool.
All right.
But at least currently, right? It's
Okay.
and it's kind of a race between um, right now the wheelchair is so much better in many regards for people with complete injuries that have the inability to walk. Now, if you have partial ability to walk, then the partial exoskeletons I think have some potential, but it has yet to be demonstrated.
Okay.
And then but as we get towards regenerative therapies, then I think that the exoskeletons have potential to help promote that regeneration because you have to kind of have active movement to go along with regeneration as well. So, but that's still very early investigative stages, I would say. So then the other thing is that uh, there are global inequities for sure.
Right.
Right? There are even inequities within the United States.
Mhm.
You know, depending on if you're insured and the quality of insurance, if you're a veteran or not a veteran, if you're an older adult or if you're a child, um, and where you live in the United States, right? Not all healthcare professionals are evenly distributed. Not all the great healthcare systems are evenly distributed in access to technology. Even things like the internet are
Sure.
equally distributed
Sure.
either. So, that's something we have to continue to work on. And and that challenge is only exacerbated on a global scale.
Right. Right.
Right? We got high income countries versus low income countries. That doesn't mean that you shouldn't stop working on the problems, right?
Right. Right.
Because everybody can eventually benefit, and not everything is expensive. Um, I worked and we patented a computer mouse that's I should have grabbed one. It's compatible with people that have upper extremity amputations to use the hook,
Okay.
prosthetic hook. And so that took a technology that would usually a camera and an eye tracking system or a forehead dot tracking system, and cost several $1,000s and brought it down to like $25.
Wow. Wow.
Right? So sometimes technology can go drive things the other way, make it more accessible and lower cost. Um, Sometimes technology can make things even possible.
Right.
So our pneumatically powered chair and pneumatically powered scooter. I like to bring it up for two reasons. You mentioned green, right, and being so. We developed the pneumatically powered chair, and its first that's used. The early adopter was actually Morgan's Inspiration Island,
Yeah.
which is part of Morgan's Wonderland down in San Antonio, Texas, and it's the first fully accessible amusement park. Now the first fully accessible water park, and Gordon Hartman worked with us because um, we wanted kids and adults. We want anybody that used a power wheelchair to be able to use the water park and go in the splash park and go in the lazy river and soak each other with the fire hoses and all that stuff. And so we worked on a power wheelchair that has no electronics, all powered by compressed air. And
Wow.
you go totally underwater. It's actually kind of fun. One of a group of students that worked on that project with me, they took it to our local wave pool and drove it underwater in the wave pool. Nearly gave the
So
lifeguards
cool.
a heart attack. They're thinking electric powered wheelchair. And of course, lifeguards being young people like they are, when they changed shift. They didn't tell the new lifeguards coming on board that there was a power wheelchair in the water. So another group had, got a little scared there. But also think was fun. It didn't take them long to realize the humor in it. And it also, what was interesting too was it only took about 10, 15 minutes for the other people in the wave pool to just pretend it was normal, right?
It was just normal, right?
It was completely normal. And so that's a technology that, totally didn't exist, basically transformed, created entire new opportunities for people. So you can wade into the water to fish, you can go to a water park or a splash park, and things like that. And you don't have to replace batteries and the chair's much lighter. One of the interesting things that we didn't expect, but it made perfect sense after we learned about it, was that teenagers were like, hey, we don't have to have mom drive us to go out with our friends because they can pick this up and put it in the back of their SUV or their pickup truck because it only weighs like 100 pounds, right?
Wow.
Rather than the 400 and some odd pounds that a normal power chair would weigh. And so people, were contacting us for that reason. Actually, even FEMA contacted us because they said, in emergency situations, if there's flooded streets and things like that, at least people could get themselves out, right? We could drop their power chair off and they could have mobility until things got settled down. So, and that's not really an expensive technology. It's just a different type of technology, a different way of thinking about things. And that's one of the advantages we have at HERL is we have engineers and MDs and OTs and PTs, and we have statisticians and market people and patent attorneys all working together, right? To business people to say, okay, and counselors, how do we solve these problems, right? And different people with different perspectives, and you get people with disabilities, you get parents and women and men and all people from all kinds of different countries and ethnic backgrounds and
all the stakeholders.
All the stakeholders get involved. You come up with different solutions, and so sometimes actually it's cheaper, right? And the other thing that's really been amazing over the last 10 years is because smartphones have gotten so powerful and so ubiquitous that we use them. We used to build a lot of custom controllers and make custom electronics and things like that. And we still do some of that. We have that capability in house. But oftentimes the computer is the person's phone, right? So we're making sort of low cost peripherals for their phone.
Cool.
And one thing I think about that technology that's pretty cool is when a person goes and buys the phone, if two people buy the phone at the same time, then they pretty much have exactly the same phone. But a month later, those phones are totally different, right?
Yeah, if you get it to a month, right?
Right, because you start downloading apps and you can put peripherals and connect it to your car and your house and all kinds of other things. And that's tremendously empowering for everybody, but especially for people with disabilities, right? And so, there's always that. That's why I get back to that's the thing about being an engineer. We try to look at what's the best way to solve the problem, and just keep looking as technology evolves. And I have no problem integrating technologies from other fields, right? If somebody else has got an excellent solution and to my problem, even though they haven't thought about it, I'm perfectly fine with adopting that, right? And of course, people with disabilities are too. A lot of them tend to be early adopters, and they go, "Wow!" Like you mentioned with your husband, thinking about let's go buy a car with as many autonomous features as I can right now, or people buying. So another example is the home automation technology, right?
Right.
People are buying that like crazy now, and that actually was all started to help people with severe disabilities, right? The old
Right.
X10 technology, and we used to call those home access systems, right? And you
It's
know, now
amazing.
you just go to your local chain store, right,
Right.
and buy it and program it, and it's pretty amazing, right? And then you can even connect it to your phone, and you know, my wife and I recently bought a new washer and dryer, and I can literally turn the washer and dryer off
It's
anywhere
amazing.
in the world, right?
That's right.
um,
Well,
and
and
that, just think about that, you know. So I gave a talk. I was the director of NASA speaker a few years ago, and they asked me to talk about people with disabilities and how they might be similar to astronauts. And my title of my talk was outer space is a hostile environment for astronauts. Earth is a hostile environment for people with disabilities.
well,
And
yeah.
so while you or I might be able to turn my washer and dryer off from miles away or anywhere in the world, for some people, just being able to turn it off in their own home is important, right?
That's right.
So that
It's the little things that improve our lives. It can be little things.
yeah, so and those are kind of awesome when those technologies collide.
I agree. Well, Dr. Cooper, I know I could talk to you for days and months and weeks, and I learned something every time I talk to you. But I know that we're over time. So I want to ask you two questions. I want you to, and then we'll let you go back to counting the votes. Just kidding. Just kidding. But I want you to tell people how to find you, but I also would like you, as you tell us how to find you, your website, and if you're on social media and stuff like that. But also, what do you wish that people? Because I know a lot of people working in corporations and employment and stuff like that follow the show. But what do you wish people? How can you help? And how can I know that you can help a lot, corporations, and but tell us, what is your hope for the future?
Well, so my hope for the future is a world where everyone can participate and contribute to the fullest extent possible. I
I'm with
firmly
you there.
believe in the model of social capital. That we all have
Yes.
social capital. Everybody has something to offer, and that we all have the ability to share and benefit what everyone has to offer.
Well said.
And I think people are welcome to connect with me via LinkedIn. That's what I personally use. HERL has a Facebook and a Twitter, Facebook page and a Twitter account as well, and of course our website, um, which is www.herl.pitt.edu. So herl.pitt.edu.
And
And
I'll get you to send me all those links, and we'll make sure that we put it out there so the audience can find it very easily.
yeah, and we um, we we welcome ideas. We constantly do voice of the consumer, voice of the provider studies, and you know we need thousands of people to participate in those. So please um, volunteer on our website to let us contact you through our registry, um, and, uh, and and just help us help you.
I agree. I agree. But thank you, Dr. Cooper, for all the work. And, you can always send me stuff and I'll help socialize it. But it's just really cool to, talk to a legend. So I'm very honored to have you on the show today. So I'll let you get back to, your world. But thank you for everything you're doing. And I hope that you win the award because I think you deserve it. So
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for allowing me to be on your show.
yeah, well, I'm hoping you'll come back and talk more about it because this is where change is happening. So we really, really are grateful for you. So thank you. And
Thank
you
you. I'd
stay
be
safe.
happy to.
All right. We'll let you go back to counting.
All right. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.